So Peter Bain here is somebody that I haven't known well for very long, but I've known him for years, and he's a wonderful representative for the Disney company. He has the voice of Thumper in Bambi, and of course Donnie Dunagan, who's the voice of Bambi in Bambi. And these folks are, I honestly think you're the last ones left that worked on that film directly, right? The two of you?
As far as we know, I don't think any of the, my wife and I were talking about it, since we were 4 and 5 at those times, the animators had to be,
yeah, they were
in their 20s probably,
right.
and
right.
so unfortunately they're mostly probably gone.
Yeah, so we're very fortunate to still have these two fine gentlemen here to tell us what it was like to work on the original film, which of course came out in 1942.
And we're vertical.
And they're vertical.
Which I think is very important.
And very sharp.
At 82 or so.
Oh, that's amazing. So just to give you a little background, Peter, you weren't a child actor. You just happened to.
Well, I was
in
a movie when I was 2.
When you were 2, okay. His father, Harry, is it Bain or Bain?
Bain.
Bain, that's what I thought. I want to make sure I said it right. Harry
if
Bain.
You remember EH, you know, like A, what'd you say? That's the easy way to remember
Bain,
it.
okay.
Bain.
So
Sorry.
your dad, Harry Bain, was a screenwriter and author of children's books and an artist and
College professor.
College professor. He was also just an interesting background. So you look up some information on Harry Bain. Interesting man. And
Well, excuse me, I have one more thing to say about him.
Okay.
His father was a mining engineer, and my father was born at a town called McCabe, which is now a ghost town outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. And in 1898, and he ended up going to Harvard from a ghost town in Arizona, and in English, and that's how he then went to California and became a screenwriter.
And wrote many films. Did The Big Parade, which was a Jean Harlow film.
Yeah, one of the last really big silent films.
And Hell's Angels?
Hell's
Yeah.
Angels, which was a Howard Hughes production. It was the most expensive film ever made at that time, which is small by today's standards. It was $25 million, but in the 30s, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
Good. And so
anyway.
he's the one that got you involved in Bambi through his connections?
Yeah, he, being in the industry, he knew about what was happening. And I don't know why he brought me over, because he really didn't want me to continue in film or being a Hollywood brat like Donnie was. So we moved to Arizona, and he became college professor shortly after the film. So anyway, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fascinating. So Donnie, you were a child actor already, having appeared in a number of films. I looked up something on you early. One of your first films was Mother Carey's Chickens,
Yes.
right? In 1938, Mother Carey's Chickens, and so those of you who are Disney fans would know that that same book that the movie was based on eventually became the film Summer Magic that Disney did later in the 60s. So that I always find really interesting too, that's your other connection, which is very cool. And then of course another very famous one, which I'll let you talk about. Very curly-headed little boy with a
Son of Frankenstein.
very tall man, yes.
Oh my God.
So,
Very first film experience was Mother Carey's Chickens. Remember Walter Brennan? He was born old, you know. Look at him in that film. He was only 28 or 29. He looked like he was 55. He made a career out of his date of birth. Great guy. That was the very first film. We were dirt poor. I mean dirt poor. In the Depression, as many were. Quality people, dirt poor. 1929, 1930, 32. And this is 1938. I had learned to tap dance barefoot on a street corner because a wonderful black man was tap dancing on Saturday with actual tap shoes in a Victrola on the sidewalk that you crank up like this. Remember those? Oh, you're fibbing. You don't remember those.
they've read about them.
From a book, you remember, right? And my mother would take me, we had no entertainment. There was zero entertainment, zero money. My mother would take me down on Saturday to watch this fellow dance for nickels and pennies. And a large crowd, because of starving entertainment. This guy was really good. He had been to an orthopedic surgeon, had no bones at all. I mean, he could just do anything. So, I'm back there, nobody's paying attention to me. I'm a little run kid, and I'm trying to mimic him. And finally, a couple of ladies took a grocery bag and boot-blacked it, and made me a top hat with it, and a stick from a tree. Da-da-da-da-da. Remember Vaudeville? Da-da-da-da, boom, boom. Huh? And they put me in a talent contest with 13 and 14-year-olds. I'm 4 years old. I think I won it on a sympathy vote. I was 4 years old. And there was a talent scout, forgive me, bona fide in those days, scout from RKO Studios in Los Angeles. And a couple of days later, my parents and I, and remember it was dirt poor, I had one suitcase for the three of us. I remember the suitcase. And off to Los Angeles we were on the train with this nice man. And got to Grand Central Station, what I call that, in Los Angeles. Very impressive. And about 4 or 5 days later, was rehearsing for Mother Carey's Chickens. And I know my mother got a new dress. I could tell right away. And 5 or 6 or 7 movies later, Mr. Disney called and said, how about doing the facial model? For Bambi of all things, if you can imagine that, right? A long time ago. And that's how all that began.
Wonderful. So I'll tell you a little bit about their further careers, and then we'll throw it open to questions, and you can ask them about Bambi and working with Walt. They had careers after that. You got out of the show business and went into housing, building housing, and working with real estate and things like that for many, many years. And Donnie went and joined the Marines. So he's got some great Marine Corps stories that he can tell you about. But I know both of them really loved their years working here at Disney, or their very short time working here at Disney in the early years is what I meant. And I'll let you tell them about this. So please ask your questions. Anybody have questions they want to ask?
What do you think would surprise fans the most to learn about the experience of making a Disney movie?
About Bambi? Dear lady, you'd throw me out of here if I gave you all my soul on that one. Let me abridge what I can share with you on a personal plane, and take you to a larger profile of that. This is 75th anniversary now, which is why we're here. It's once this wonderful guy, and this old jerk is here. Right? In the last nine and a half years, since Disney found out that we were still around, and I remember that call, you still breathing? Yes! Since that time, and before that, I never talked about these things. Zero. Never. One, I thought it was vain to do so, and I'm not hoped that way. I certainly didn't talk about the movies in the Marine Corps. I went through all the ranks. I mean, all the ranks, okay? Didn't come out of some academy. I never talked about the films, any of them. I made 7 or 8 movies, and Bambi being the last. World War II preempted everything. Pearl Harbor preempted everything, okay? Changed lives. I ended up in Ireland, lived with a grandfather in Donegal County, Ireland, if you don't mind. No movies. Fast forward, last 9 years. Been able to get more done for good things, but Bambi. Then if 3 of us, 4 of us have been decorated in the White House 5 times, I'm dead serious, okay? And evidence of that, instead of just being rhetoric, are things like this. I get 1 of these a month. Christmas time, more than 1 a month. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Look at here. With letters inside from children all over the world. Look at here. 1 a month, minimum, plus 2.5 to 3 letters a week from all over. From Scandinavia, from Canada, from Panama, everywhere.
And Russia. I got one from Russia just not long ago with no return envelope, no return. That made it a little hard. Anyway, excuse me.
No. Yeah, watch out, he probably had a microphone in it. But that's the best evidence to go to the heart of your question, okay? And I've said this several times, but it still is an emotional thing for me. I promise you, you walk into a group that's trying to raise money for something, and they're having a hard time. And they can introduce Peter and me and Charlie Potato over here and all kinds of credentials, and they'd all go, And as soon as somebody says, hey, and by the way, that old jerk was Bambi, bang! the problem with the playground, fixed. Problem with this, fixed, okay? Because a Bambi cannot live better than that little deer in our culture. Aren't you sorry you asked, though?
You had a question?
Yeah, hi. I actually saw you when the TCM Film Festival did the Bambi event, and I kind of fell in love with you because you were so charismatic with your stories. And one of you talked about it briefly at the TCM Film Festival, but can you talk a little bit more about what it was like kind of pre-production of Bambi? We always see the famous picture of the animators with the deer and doing that. Was that, just a setup for the cameras and publicity? Were both of you able to interact with that, or how much of the animators and did you get to work with in terms of your little, you guys were portraying animals, so it's a little hard, for the animators to look at you and take characteristics of you as kids, but did they talk to you, and how much in depth did the animators get with that on Bambi?
Well, I think that our characters in person as people, as opposed to the animals, I honestly, being only four years old at the time, I have no idea if that had any influence on the animators at all. I think, we did see them a little bit, but it was really the voice that they later, the dialogue that was prescribed later came to them and was obviously very influential on the way they portrayed some of the animals, and I think that was where the real influence occurred.
To your point, they did have live reference animals and things on
Oh,
the
they
set.
did.
Did you get to interact? I saw a picture of you once holding a bunny.
Yeah, no, they had sort of a little zoo, and with deer and rabbits and probably a skunk or two. I am not sure, but that was, for the purpose of allowing the animators to see the anatomy of the creatures and how they moved, even though they were in captivity, not in real life, or not out in the wild. I remember going out to the zoo one time with Walt and some other people and holding the bunny, and I thought that was kind of cool because at that point I lived in LA and really had no reference to the wild at that time. The rest of my life has all been in the wild. I've never lived in a city, and I've never lived on probably less, except for about 2 years, on less than 10 or 20 acres. So, but at that time, no. So I thought it was cool to be at the zoo.
And Bambi and Faylene were here at the studio, so you got to see them.
I almost got fired on this one, okay? I'm sure my mother was always worried about my getting fired. Mind you, I've been, as a child actor with all the crazy curly hair. Remember that curly hair and those things, huh? Straight as a string. they curled it twice a day. It was a bummer. Terrible. Anyway, so I was kind of 6, maybe 5.5, going on 19 kind of guy. By the time I got to Disney, before the voice work was the facial model. They look left, look right, look afraid. And I had always known the storyline. You know, what is this about? You know, somebody gave us some idea. Have Boris Karloff, who was a great guy, give you the storyline of Son of Frankenstein that you have really lived. I'm going to tell you, he was a good storyteller. Okay? So, what's the storyline? What's the storyline of this Bambi thing? Right? And nobody would tell us, right? I had not seen a deer. Later we had the animals aboard Disney lot. I had not seen a deer in my life. Remember, we were very poor. Now the movies, bang, 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 one movie after the other. Didn't get into public school until I think the 3rd or 4th grade. Tutor, all the time. So I'm making a lot of noise about, show me a deer that's moving, right? So they took me to Griffith Park Zoo, right? And there was a deer, one deer, down in a very well manicured pit, as I remember, depressed area with a fence around it. One deer, right? And just like this. No move, right? Yeah. And look like a statue. So somebody went to a little machine or something, got some corn or something. You know, I could throw the deer, so I threw at the deer, right? And it bounced right by him. Here's the deer, right? And I said, quote, Mom, I remember this early, right? Mom, that is boring. That deer is boring. I don't want to be boring. And my mother said, don't say that back at the studios. There were 2 guys with us from Disney. Very courteous men in suits had motored us there. Okay? And so I think they ratted me out on this one because about 2 days later, could have been more than that, I'm walking down the hallway with something I'm supposed to have for a change, and here comes Mr. Disney with somebody. Mr. Disney was a worker. He led by example, okay? He was participating. He wasn't like some of the other Hollywood execs I saw that were, look at me, kind of guys, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, here comes Mr. Disney with somebody, and he's busy. He's walking down the hall, facing me. He puts his hand up and pauses me. I've seen him before many times. I've talked to him. Very nice, incredible human communication guy, okay? He looked at me and says, you went to the zoo? Yes, sir. And you saw a deer? Yes, sir. And he looked at me, listen to this is funny. Donnie, don't worry. Our Bambi will not be boring. I went home, I went back and told my mom that.
Walt knew everything.
Huh?
Walt heard and saw everything.
Yeah, he knew everything.
We have another question? One more question?
Can you both talk a little bit more about your specific personal interactions with Walt and how involved he was with the actual production and recording of your voices?
Well, I think Donnie had a lot more interaction with Walt than I did. I think I only met him twice, believe it or not. But you have to understand the recording sessions were 1 or 2 days, and then 6 months later, at least for me, the way it worked, there was another recording session, and there were maybe 8 of them total, and that was over almost a 2-year period, because it took, what, 4 years to make the movie? And so they weren't, you know, we weren't on set for months and months at a time at all. To my knowledge, I don't recall seeing Walt near the recording studio. He may have been in the background at some points, but he wasn't directly involved with that.
But you did work directly with Frank and Ollie and Milt Kahl a great deal.
Right.
Three of them. Mostly you worked with.
But also, I was 4 years old, and my memory is slipped on me. His is much sharper than mine.
Because I was around for the facials off and on, and then the voice off and on, just like Peter said, the time was elongated. There was a lot of interruptions. And if you're quiet and you behave yourself, contrary to what my wife might tell you, right? they forget you're there if you're a kid, right? I was around a lot, and sometimes there's nothing to do, but they wanted you there, right? I had seen in 7 previous movies excellent directors, excellent producers, excellent sound people. Then I saw some ladies will get mad at me. I saw some pompous jackasses. Right? And forget it, that's a sure thing. But the old Marine comes out of me once in a while, right? I mean, some real, when the sound people and the assistant directors say, "Oh, watch out, here he comes." Huh? What kind of leader is that, right? Huh? Mr. Disney was absolutely the opposite. And if you didn't know who he was, moving around getting things done, you think somebody just hired him and he's trying to impress somebody. You know what I mean? He was busy. And they had not had children on the lot before. And I tease about this sometimes, and I think sometimes some ladies that I go through an office because I'm lost hadn't seen a child since birth. You know, who are you? And so Peter and I, and a wonderful little girl that played Feline, must have been some of the very first children aboard Disney Lot. But to answer your question, bang in the eyes, Mr. Disney led by example. He didn't lead by memoranda or wearing a fancy suit for everybody's afraid of him.
Thank you.
So just one final question for the two of you, and just your own opinion and your own hopes for this film. What do you think the legacy of this movie is going forward in the next 75 years of Bambi? What do you hope happens, and what do you think will happen?
Well, I've felt for a long time that Bambi, the movie, was a very strong environmental statement, which becomes more meaningful as the years go on, and we get more and more worried about what's happening to the planet. And when you think back about it in the 1930s, I think Walt Disney was incredibly ahead of his time in terms of being even aware that there was a need to look after our planet. And the movie is just a very strong statement, in my opinion, that I think will continue, hopefully, for a long time. And even back then, man was the problem. It was the enemy. And I just think, you know, the fire scene, killing Bambi's mother and so forth, it didn't put man in a very good position.
I couldn't endorse that in 1,000 years. I'm an ardent student of theirs. Okay, you might call me a greenie, right? You understand what that is, right? Mm-hmm. I think Mr. Disney's fire scene was probably the first environmental suggestion in a major film in America. I think Peter's right on the button, bang, okay? And it took some courage to do that. That's fact. The next part is hearsay. I can remember adults talking about after the release, okay, but this is hearsay. I think it's pretty good hearsay. I remember adults talking after the release that Mr. Disney got bad mail and some heat, quote, over that environmental scene. Okay? And the imagination doesn't have to work too hard about thinking about some family, still the Depression's on, right? Up in Montana where the grandpa is going out to deer hunt to feed the family. Now, there's nothing immoral about that, right, during the Depression? But some granddaughter is saying to grandpa, "Papa, you can't go out, you're going to shoot Bambi." Huh? Yeah. So he got some heat over that. That took some courage. Peter's right on the button on that one. Took some courage, and to reinforce this with you, 5 years ago, 9 years ago, last week, okay, we still get these kinds of things from children on their initiative from all over, huh? Show me another film anywhere, almost in any country, okay, that has that kind of presence, that kind of influence, particularly on children.
Yeah, something you said reminded me. I would venture to say that the NRA is not really proud of this or happy with this movie.
I think they've gotten used to the idea.
Sorry.
Well, thank you very much to both of you, and thank you for being here today.